Well, good evening, friends. Let us be still just for a moment. A pause. There is one presence, one power, one life. Every problem is the suggestion of a second power, and we dissolve it not by struggle, but by recognition. What if there is a single prayer that does not plead with God, but turns silently within and lets grace do the work, so completely that the appearance melts like mist before the sun? Welcome to JLGLD as I teach Reveal D. The one prayer that Einstein dissolves any problem. In the spirit of the infinite way, we will not add words to words. We will touch that inner awareness where the Christ within announces itself and the seeming problem is seen as nothing. If this speaks to you, like this video, subscribe and comment 111 to affirm one presence. Stay with me, because in a heartbeat I'll give you the single lines and the silence behind it that makes fear impossible. Can you feel it rising already? It begins with this recognition: one presence, one power, no second cause. Infinity cannot be twofold. The moment we admit a second power, disease, lack, human will, we have stepped out of spiritual vision and into hypnotism. God, being omnipresence, leaves no spot outside of itself. Being omnipotence, leaves no energy to oppose it. Being omniscience, leaves no mind to argue against it. Every problem is the belief that there is another cause producing effects apart from God. But what is not God has no law, no substance, no continuity. It is an appearance without a source, a shadow without a sun, and a shadow has no law to enforce itself when the light is directly faced. Consider how quickly fear grows when we forget this. A symptom seems to shout, a bill arrives, a headline blazes, and immediately we bow before a second altar. We try to fight, fix, persuade, or outthink it. Yet the struggle itself is the confession that something besides God has power. Spiritual prayer ceases that confession. It refuses the duel. It stands in the light and lets the shadow be a shadow. What then is a second cause? Anything we imagine operates on its own: a germ, a horoscope, a difficult person, memory or heredity, chance or fate. Each claims, I can act on you. But in the spiritual universe, effect does not act on effect. Form does not govern form. Law is invisible because is spirit. What shows up as form is but the picture on the screen. We do not argue with the picture. Instead, we tune the projector. This is why the prayer of recognition is power, though it uses no power of its own. Within, we become still and acknowledge, I and the Father are one. There is no power apart from God. The carnal mind, the belief in separation, is not power. As this realization dawns, fear loses its oxygen. The mind becomes unarmed, the heart unarmored. We have not conquered anything. We have unmasked a suggestion and watched it fade. Practice it in the very moment of temptation. When pain pinches or panic rises, do not treat it as a power. Turn quietly within. Let the breath settle. Refuse to outline, refuse to bargain. Whisper, if you like, there is only God. No life separate, no mind apart, no law against me. Then wait. Not a tense waiting, but a resting. Behold the salvation of the Lord. You are not using truth as a wand. Truth is using you as a transparency. This is not denial, it is reclassification. The appearance remains what it is, a passing picture, until the inner light reveals its unreality as cause. We do not resist evil. We behold it as nothing in the light of the One. Even the word problem softens because we no longer grant it entity. Our attention returns to presence, and in that recognition, harmony is the natural outflow, as heat is the outflow of flame. As you live with one presence, you find there is only one law acting, one life living itself as you, one substance forming as supply, one love maintaining all. You become less impressed by storms and more aware of the atmosphere that stills them, less fascinated by effects and more faithful to the invisible that gives them name and shape. And from that faithfulness, prayer becomes recognition rather than petition. Petition implies lack, distance, and delayed. I am here, the good I need is elsewhere, and time must bridge the gap. Recognition is immediate. God is the fullness, here, now, as the only cause, life and law. In recognition, we do not try to talk God into being God. We consent to what already is. We do not outline outcomes, bargain with promises, or decorate words with anxious insistence. We rest the tongue and let the heart turn. Prayer, then, is not getting health, supply, or peace. It is awakening to the presence that is health, supply, and peace revealing itself. It is an inward nod, a holy yes, where the I that is God announces itself as the very activity of our awareness. Even words, when we use them, are only tuning forks. A simple acknowledgement, God alone is struck within, and we listen for the overtones. The aim is not to accumulate statements, but to become transparent to the silence behind them. Affirmations may quiet the surface. Recognition opens the depth where grace functions without our management. The carnal mind claimers to be appeased. Spirit requires only that we be still and yield. Notice how petition keeps the problem alive by centering attention on it. Dear God, fix this. Recognition removes the center from the problem altogether. Father, I behold thy presence here. The very beholding is the prayer. It is not a plea, it is sight. And in that sight the picture loses authority, because causation is no longer assigned to form. We do not push the waves, we realize the ocean. Practice becomes simple. Pause. Feel the breath soften. Let every thought about outcome pass by like birds in a wide sky. Whisper inwardly, if it helps, I can of mine own self do nothing, the Father within doth the work. Then listen, not for words, but for a quiet certainty, a softening in the belly, a spaciousness in the chest, a loosening of the forehead. That ease is the sign that attention has shifted from effect to cause, from object to presence. For gratitude follows not as courtesy, but as recognition's fragrance. We are grateful before any change in the picture because the reality is intact. Thanksgiving, then, is not payment for services rendered, it is the natural response to beholding what is. From that beholding, order appears where confusion seemed, sufficiency where lack seemed, reconciliation where division seemed, each as the outworking of an inner alignment, never as the product of human will. Should the appearance linger, we do not go back to petition. We deepen recognition. We let the I, which is God, maintain its own universe. We do not outline how harmony must show itself nor when. We keep the window clean and leave the light to illumine. Because prayer is recognition, it is effortless in essence. Effort belongs to resistance, and resistance belongs to the belief in a second cause. In resting, we are not passive, we are receptive to the only activity, the activity of truth. This is how the prayer that asks nothing yields everything, not things, but awareness. And from awareness, needed forms arrange themselves under grace, in right sequence, without strain, because government rests upon shoulders we cannot see now. From here we enter the silence and allow grace to do the work. This silence is not the muting of sounds or the suppression of thoughts. It is the cessation of taking thought. It is the holy pause where the personal sense relinquishes the lever and the infinite invisible takes its rightful government. Be still and know that I am God is not a verse to recite but a state to inhabit. In that stillness, we do not energize the picture. We behold the presence that renders the picture powerless. Letting grace work is the relinquishment of mental engineering. We do not treat a condition. We rest in the awareness that there is no condition outside of God. We do not aim truth at appearances as if truth were a weapon. We yield and let truth be itself. The Father within doth the work. Our practice is consent. Our prayer is availability. We are not the healer. We are the transparency through which the one heals by revealing the unreality of a second cause. A room can be quiet while the mind storms, and a city can roar while the heart is still. The silence we seek is an interior Sabbath where the impulse to fix, improve, or resist subsides. Sit for a moment, eyes open or closed as you are led. Let the breath soften, let the jaw release. Turn the attention inward and simply acknowledge, here I am, Father. What not as request, but as presentation. Then listen, not for sentences, not for signs, but for a gentle clearing, a widening space, a sense of soft authority that needs no argument. Words, if they come, are few and simple, and then they fall away. The letter of truth may usher us to the threshold. The Spirit receives us. In that receiving, something quietly alters. The compulsion to monitor results eases, the timeline loosens, the heart remembers it is held. We find ourselves less inclined to push and more willing to witness. The role shifts from doer to beholder, from planner to presence. Do not be concerned if thoughts parade by. You are not arranging the mind, you are abiding as awareness. When you notice the pull to solve gently returns, take no thought. When fear tightens, return. I can of mine own self do nothing. Each return is an act of trust, a step back into the sanctuary where cause is felt rather than conceived. Grace is not an event added to life. It is life revealing its seamlessness where we had imagined seams. Sometimes the fruit appears as a softening in the body, a warmth in the chest, an unforced clarity about the next simple step. Sometimes a relationship eases, a need is quietly met, a symptom unwends as if it had mislaid its script. At other times, nothing in the picture seems to move, yet the center of gravity has shifted, and the picture no longer claims authority. The sign of grace is peace prior to evidence, peace that does not borrow its confidence from outcomes. As this becomes habit, silence accompanies us into the clamor of the day. We pause before replying, we breathe before deciding, we listen within before acting. The old reflex to make something happen grows foreign. We discover that inspiration arrives whole, that timing arranges itself, that what is ours to do appears without strain, and what is not ours to do falls away without guilt. Even in the midst of activity, there is an undercurrent of rest, a sense that the yoke is easy because it is not ours to carry. We give up the fever of results and accept the rhythm of revelation, where doing flows from being, and being is anchored in the invisible that never argues, never hurries, never hesitates, or yet never fails, which is why the next movement is to impersonalize the appearance, remove the me that imagines itself besieged. The sense of me in trouble is the only patient. When that sense softens, the picture loses the hook by which it seemed to grip. Personalizing an appearance gives it a place to land, a name to answer to, a history to feed on. Impersonalizing unhooks it from identity and returns attention to the one presence that never suffers, never fears, never lacks. Error is never a person, place, or thing. It is a universal suggestion of separation, what Scripture calls the carnal mind. To call it
my anxiety,
my diagnosis, his cruelty, is to adopt it. Instead, we strip it of ownership. This is not personal, it is a claim without law. There is no separate self for error to act upon, no private mind to be invaded, no private life to be threatened. I and the Father are one, the Father is the I of me. In that light, accusation loses its target. This releases blame and self-blame alike. When we believe a person is the cause, this body, that boss, those conditions, we bind ourselves to a cycle of defense and counterattack. Impersonalization does not excuse conduct, it relocates causation in the realm of belief, where it can be dissolved. We cease fighting people and begin witnessing the nothingness of a second power. Then correction, if needed, proceeds without hate. Boundaries, if needed, are set without fear. Action arises from clarity rather than compulsion. Practice it at the first sign of reaction. Notice the tightening, the story, the reflex to defend. Gently say within, this is not me, this is the suggestion of a self apart from God. It has no mandate, no law, no continuity. Then turn to recognition. Father, thou art the only I hear. Let the breath lengthen, let the eyes soften. Refuse to argue with the picture. Let presence reclaim center stage. As ownership falls away, so does urgency. As urgency quiets, the light that is always present becomes evident. In the realm of health, impersonalization is tender and exact. Not my body is failing, but a suggestion claims embodiment. Yet body is the instrument of life, and life is indivisible. We are not managing flesh, we are abiding as awareness through which harmony registers. In supply, not my employer is my source, but one substance is appearing as right activity. In relationships, not that person is my problem, But a belief in separation is posing as conflict. There is only one life expressing. Forgiveness flowers naturally here, because there is nothing left to defend. Condemnation presupposes a separate self with private authorship. Revelation unveils a single I am, revealing itself. We do not whitewash harm. We see through the mask of personhood to the impersonal claim behind it, and in that seeing the mask falls. What remains is the capacity to bless without naivete, to speak truth without venom, to move on without carrying the weight of a past self. This is not a trick of language. It is a shift of identity from the personality suit to the I that is God. Thoughts may still clatter, sensations may still arise, pictures may still parade, but the me they sought to recruit is absent. Without a claimant, claims collapse. Without a believer, beliefs disband. In daily life, this looks like quiet poise in conversations that once inflamed, ease in tasks that once daunted, wisdom in choices that once confused. Before a meeting, pause. There is no private mind to persuade. One mind meets itself. Before opening the ledger, pause. One law governs substance. Before answering a provocation, pause. Gnome to defend, only presence to witness. And this presence is the Christ, the light of God active as your consciousness, the true I that is never born and never threatened. Not a person, not a theology, but the divine activity of love and law revealing itself where a me once stood. To behold the Christ is to look out from that light, not at it, to let awareness be informed by what is spiritually true rather than by what sense testimony shouts. When you behold, you do not brace, you relax into vision. You witness, you do not resist. Resistance is the subtle admission that something besides God has force. It tightens the jaw, hardens the eyes, and drafts the nervous system into battle. Witnessing is the opposite movement. It opens, softens, and yields authority to the inner ordaining. The moment you witness, you withdraw emotional fuel from the appearance. A fire cannot burn without oxygen. A problem cannot persist without your consent to its claim of power. Beholding the Christ is that withdrawal of consent, not by effort, but by recognition of the one who is quietly governing. How does this feel in practice? A sharp word flies at you. Instead of meeting it at its own altitude, you pause inside and acknowledge only the Christ, the one mind, is present here. Your tone steadies, the pace slows, and the next words come clean, sometimes as silence, or the body signals pain, rather than wrestling with it. You rest awareness in the fact that Christ is the law of harmony to every function and form, that life lives itself whole. You do not force relief. You behold wholeness and let the picture take instruction from reality, or a bill presses on the mind. You acknowledge the Christ as your sufficiency, the activity of supply as the movement of one substance appearing as right form. You are not conjuring money, you are consenting to order. To witness is to let the inner teacher interpret the scene. The senses report contrast, Christ reveals unity. The senses report sequence and delay. Christ reveals the eternal now in which fulfillment is already fact. This is why witnessing feels like quiet certainty without theatrics. There is an ease at the center, a willingness to do the next simple thing without strain, and a refusal to rehearse outcomes. You are seeing through, not staring at. Beholding the Christ also alters how we see others. The moment we register sonship, God expressing as this one and that one, the mask of offender and offended thins. Correction, if needed, arises without hostility because the basis is love recognizing its own. Forgiveness is no longer a task, it is sight. The so-called enemy is encountered as a beleaguered belief, not a sovereign will, and compassion gains practical intelligence, the right word, the clean boundary, the timely quiet. Let your body cooperate with witnessing. Soften the eyes, let the breath lengthen, feel the ground under the feet. These gestures cue the nervous system that no emergency exists, making it easier to register the fine movements of grace. Inwardly, a simple acknowledgement may arise. Christ within is the only life, mind, and law here, and then even that falls away into stillness. Wait for the subtle shift. a widening, a warmth, a clarity that needs no argument. Let action come from that, and if no action comes, let silence be your action, because the Christ interprets even silence as agency when it is born of seeing rather than of fear, and from that seeing, resting in the eye becomes the simplest posture. The eye is not the personality, it is the divine identity that was before Abraham, the presence that says I am and means the only life here. When attention abides as this eye, the sense of a separate self, worried, managing, defending, has nowhere to stand. The picture may still flicker, but the light by which it is seen is untroubled, and in that untroubled light the picture loses its claim to causation. Rest is not withdrawal, it is agreement with reality. Rest does not abandon duty, it lifts duty into devotion, where action is God's activity recognized as your present consciousness. To rest in the eye, turn from the object to the seer, from the thought to the awareness that knows the thought, from the sensation to the witnessing presence. Let the word I be felt without attaching a story to it. I, pure, unqualified, self-existent. Notice how the body softens as ownership dissolves. Notice how the mind quiets when it no longer imagines it must invent safety. This is not concentration, it is relaxation into what is already so. The eye of you is the eye of God. There are not two eyes, one human and one divine, struggling for the microphone. There is one eye individuating as many forms, never divided, never endangered. In that resting appearances lose the oxygen of fear and fascination. A symptom, once magnified by attention, becomes a moving cloud in a vast sky. A deadline, once tyrannical, becomes a marker that grace can easily reframe. A conflict, once personal, becomes a claim that cannot find a claimant. Rest is the law itself, because the law of being is completeness, and completeness requires no strain to prove itself. We do not make the ocean wet, we stop pretending dryness. Resting is that stopping. You may help the nervous system participate, let the breath lengthen, feel the ground under the feet, let the shoulders drop. Then, inwardly, abide in the simple awareness I. If words arise, they are few, I and the Father are one. I am is the only presence here. Then release even the words and be the seeing. Should thought rush back with its pictures, do not wrestle. Return gently I. Each return is a small surrender, and 1,000 small surrenders become an atmosphere through which grace easily moves. Action that flows from this I is clean. You answer emails without inner debate. You make the call or you do not without rehearsal. You say yes or no without apology, because the yes or no belongs to the I that sees wholes rather than fragments. Timing arranges itself. Opportunities that once required pushing arrive of their own accord. Doors that should not be entered stay shut without drama. This is not passivity. It is precision born of union. If an appearance shouts, do not elevate it by argument. Acknowledge I is here indivisible, self-governing, self-revealing. Rest again. Perhaps you place a hand over the heart. Perhaps you look out a window and let the horizon reset scale. You are not waiting for the picture to change. You are consenting to behold that the I has never been in the picture and therefore cannot be threatened by it. The dissolving is not an act you perform. It is the inevitable outcome of seeing that the only permanence belongs to I, and everything unlike I is a traveling show with no projector of its own.